I'm going to ask you a question. I just want you to answer the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Sure.
What is Owl's Quest?
Do I have to be appropriate?
Somebody nailed a fly out on my tree. I love the taste of paper. Wait a minute, that could be useful.
Owl's Quest is a little game that has legendary meme status for King's Quest speedrunners. And when I thought about sharing this with all of you, I realized that to understand that meme, to truly appreciate the demented brilliance of it, we would have to dig deep. Today, I want to show you why I think Owl's Quest sits at the center of everything amazing about the adventure game genre, and maybe about everything in gaming, period. Owl's Quest is an AGS King's Quest fan game developed by Joel Page. But what does that all mean? Let's start with King's Quest and the company that made it. This is Ken and Roberta Williams, the founders of Sierra. To help explain just how important and influential the company was, I spoke with Sean Mills, the guy who literally wrote the book. For people who might not know what the Sierra adventure is, what is this book?
This book is the story of Sierra, specifically more of an oral history. It's as much as possible in the words of the people who were there. There's about 50 something people that I interviewed for the book, and that's from people from Ken Williams, founder and owner, down to people who just worked in the distribution, because they of course had their own distribution. They would copy the discs. Scott Murphy, creator of Space Quest, he started copying discs. So it's the history of the company from all those people. That's what the book is.
Sierra was at the forefront of many important gaming advances.
There's the fact that Mystery House is the first graphical adventure game, which looks, from a 2023 perspective, absolutely awful. It's stick figures and, my 6-year-old can draw better than that. But it's just miles ahead of anything else on the market. When you move from Mystery House to Wizard and Princess, it looks like a horrible piece of crap and it plays like a tank now. It's a horrible game. But at the time, Infocom was still doing like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is just a text adventure.
Sierra had many game series, but the one we really have to look at is King's Quest. This was Sierra's flagship series, the one that set the standard for adventure gaming for over a decade. And every step of the way, Sierra pushed the technological envelope. In the first game, Sir Graham saves the kingdom of Daventry to become King Graham. The game box boasted of a 3D environment, which meant you could walk behind things. Believe me, this was exciting at the time. Previous adventure games had, at most, still images.
So that's the first adventure game where you control the character. It's not just a static screen, you're actually walking Sir Graham, around that screen. Roberta is a very creative person. And while she understands the technology and she knows what she's doing technologically, she's a creative person by default. So she would not care about the limits of the technology, might be a way to put it. That's in my own words, but she just wanted what was best to serve the game.
In the sequel, King Graham journeys to the land of Kalima to find a wife. It's pretty much like the first game, but with an additional speed setting. And Dracula. The third game threw players for a loop because you play as the previously unknown character Gwydion, slave to the evil wizard Manannan. It turns out Gwydion is the son of King Graham, Prince Alexander, who was kidnapped as a baby. Game 4 featured Graham's other child, Princess Rosella, on a quest to find a magical fruit that would save the king's life. King's Quest IV was the first King's Quest game programmed in the SCI engine and had improved graphics. It was also the first PC game, period, to support discrete sound cards.
Then King's Quest IV is MIDI music, so that's a huge thing. They pushed going away from the PC speaker because Roberta Williams didn't like it. One of the main reasons for King's Quest IV moving to the next engine, moving from AGI to SCI in the engines, was the development of the new engine that could handle sound cards. And so they didn't develop the sound card, but they said to Roland, we're going to make all our games for this. So, do us a deal,
In the next game, Graham would save his entire family from the evil wizard Mordak. This game made another huge graphical leap, with 256 colors instead of 16. It was also the first King's Quest with a point-and-click cursor interface. Some people were upset by this change, thinking that removing the parser also removed some of the game's challenge, but Sierra was trying to appeal to a wider audience.
Sierra's not always first. That's a bit of a myth with fans. Sierra's first with a lot of things. They weren't. They were generally in the top 2 or 3 people with those things, but they drove those things hard. So an example of that is CD-ROM technology. They were not the first. There's a couple of games out on CD before that, but when they hit CD, that's when... And then they got bundling deals to put King's Quest V in with the Sound Blaster packs at the time, and the Sound Blaster CD-ROM packs. So there are 1 and 2 speed CD-ROMs. Wow. You just look back at this stuff and think, how did we manage?
1992 saw the release of King's Quest VI, where Prince Alexander seeks out his own bride in the land of the Green Isles. This is my personal favorite of the series, and I think it has the best storytelling and the most memorable characters.
Certainly those first 5 and 6 King's Quest games, I think pretty much every one of them has something that pushed not just adventure games, but the industry forward.
The 7th game has the player controlling both Queen Valenice and Princess Rosella. The art style was clearly inspired by Disney, and Sierra also simplified the user interface. There were no verbs, just one icon for walking, talking, and interacting with objects. But let's go back to King's Quest V, because that's the game you need to understand to get Owl's Quest. This was the first King's Quest game that I remember playing as a kid with my father. It's possible we might have bought another one before this, but this is the one that sticks in my memory. Now, this game is hard. There are a ton of puzzles that don't make sense, and I want to say that we got the hint book eventually, though my memory of that is fuzzy too. What I do remember is loving the world, the scary forest, the endless desert, Mordak's island, and every single cliff.
No, Graham, don't!
Uh-oh, that last step was a doozy.
Like what? This one doesn't even make sense. It's like 3 feet, but that's not why we're talking about King's Quest V. We're here to talk about Cedric the Owl. After Mordak steals Graham's castle, Cedric explains everything.
I saw it all, yes I did.
With a little bit of fairy dust, Cedric and Graham fly to the home of Crispin, a friendly wizard. Crispin gives you even more backstory. Cedric then becomes your sidekick, following you the rest of the game.
You go with him, Cedric. Show him the way.
Oh,
Yes, you. Don't be such a coward.
I liked Cedric as a kid, and when he got hurt, I remember getting really upset and scared.
Poor Cedric, having been seriously wounded by the vicious Harpies, he now lies moaning and in pain upon the sandy path.
Graham, help me.
I actually cared about this owl.
Cedric, where do you hurt?
Ooh, everywhere.
But when I got older, I found that Cedric had a certain...
Shut up, Owl! Wait, oh, fuck! Oh, hey, Cedric's dead. Oh, nice.
Shut up, Cedric.
reputation. If you had to describe Cedric the Owl as someone who had never played King's Quest V, what would you tell them?
Okay. Cedric the Owl.
Cedric the Owl is basically like any other annoying video game tutorial.
Have you ever played Ocarina of Time? Do you remember Navi? Hey, look, listen, right over there. What's that? What's that?
Do you see that? It's like, oh my god, relax. Cedric, we don't need you.
He's absolutely poisonous.
Graham, watch out! A poisonous snake!
Be wary of that owl, because he's up to no good.
Because not only is he just always there, always taking up time, and always annoying as heck, his voice is shrill and he's lame. And
I love bad things that are so bad that they're good. Cedric is totally in that category with Mask of Eternity. So Cedric is so annoying and so silly and so grating that he's hilarious.
he deserves his fate in the end.
All right, wait for it. Here comes the best part of the game. Wait for it. Oh! Take that, Cedric, you jerk.
Oh, but don't worry. Crispin shows up and takes care of Cedric.
Abra! Abra!
Here, eat this. It looks delicious. I'm sure I will.
So first off, I was playing on the floppy version, and I had no idea what Cedric sounded like. The CD version added voice acting. They didn't know if hiring professional actors would be worth the expense, so they built a little recording studio and cast Sierra employees.
Hey, what was that?
Out of all the voices, I'd argue that Cedric's is actually one of the better ones.
Yonder's the crystal cave. There you will find the Yeti.
Still, I can understand why some may find his falsetto a little grating.
Ooh, if you follow this road along the river, you'll come to the town bakehouse. You might find something delicious. Useful there.
Cedric is also not that useful. At first, he'll tell you where some landmarks are.
Ooh, if you follow the path to the south over the next rise, you'll come to the town.
But it's pretty easy to find those on your own, and he quickly runs out of things to say.
Cedric seems to be thinking big thoughts right now, perhaps planning their next move, and so is not in a talkative mood.
I don't know. He's just there. He doesn't do anything.
The programmers also had problems with Cedric breaking the game in certain scenes, so they just had him not go there.
Ooh, I'll wait for you here, Graham.
He was breaking the game. So they had to have him not go into a lot of places and say, I'm going to wait out here, Graham.
Ooh, no. Ooh, I'm not going in there. Can't you read the sign? Ooh, there's nothing but a hot, dry desert for the west. Ooh, if you insist on going, I'll wait for you here. Mind if I wait for you here?
No, that's a good idea, Cedric. You be the lookout out here.
I think where Cedric and I didn't see eye to eye was because I did listen to him. Oh, don't go in the desert. Okay, I won't. Don't go into the woods. Okay, yeah, you're right. It's dangerous. But, you have to. Cedric cannot be trusted. Don't listen to him.
Come on, Cedric. There might be something important in here.
Go if you want to. I'll wait here.
Where Cedric is really unique and special is that all the advice he has for you is either completely unhelpful or he gives it to you right when you're already about to die.
No, Graham, don't! Watch out, there's a hole in the boat!
Help! Help!
Thanks for playing King's Quest V.
Cedric was voiced by Richard Aronson, a Sierra programmer responsible for Conquests of the Longbow, among other things. Here's my favorite bit of Richard Aronson trivia. There's a famous anecdote online called Erik and the Gazebo, or sometimes Erik and the Dread Gazebo. It's about a Dungeons & Dragons session where a player doesn't know what a gazebo is and tries to attack it. The story is well known in Dungeons & Dragons lore and pops up from time to time in other places. For example, there's a gazebo monster card in Munchkin. Well, the author of this story is Richard Aronson. That's right, Cedric wrote Erik and the Gazebo. In the book The Sierra Adventure, Richard recalls the voice acting direction from Roberta Williams. Cedric is a very, very smart 5-year-old boy. He will make mistakes because he's so smart, so when he's not really sure about something, he'll say it's the absolute truth, but he'll sound a little uncertain. And he's an owl.
would almost describe him like every 90s cartoon needed to have an animal mascot. It's like for some reason, it didn't matter who your hero was, they needed to have an animal mascot and they had to have a catchphrase. That's Cedric. I mean, that is apparently Sierra thought that this was the way to go. I don't know. Normally you'd market toys alongside him instead. I mean, maybe, I don't know, burnt effigies or something.
Sean Mills, for his part, doesn't share these negative sentiments.
I think Cedric is one of the best things to happen in a King's Quest game. Honestly do. If you play with Cedric and you look at Cedric or you talk to Cedric in any screen in King's Quest V, he will give you hints about what is going on around you. The initial design philosophy of him is to help children when they're a bit stuck in the game. And he does that.
Aronson confirmed how children could relate to the character in this interview with the Adventure Game Geek.
He was written specifically to make the children who are playing the game, the younger ones, have someone they could feel for and identify with. Adults who encounter Cedric for the first time as an adult generally hate him, and children who encounter Cedric for the first time as a child love him. And when they played Cedric for the tours in the recording studio, everyone nearby could hear Cedric. And the adults on the tour would always be rolling their eyes, and the children would always be entranced. And I think that's a part of voicing a role. If you're voicing a villain, you have to commit to being unlikable sometimes. And, every actor knows that's ever played a villain.
A villain, you say?
Cedric the Owl, lovable guide and feathered friend. Or is he? What if Cedric the Owl were actually Mordak, the evil wizard? The evidence is everywhere. When King Graham discovers his stolen castle, who is the first to arrive at the crime scene? Cedric the Owl. Cedric claims to care about Graham's well-being. If that is true, why does he continually refuse to help him? What kind of owl leaves their friend to die in the hot sands? Mordak the Owl.
Cedric would not return for any of the subsequent King's Quest games.
By the time 6 came out, or was even being worked on, I'd been transferred to the Sierra Network, and I really opposed the notion of doing more Cedric because I damaged my voice for that role, and my falsetto's never been the same. So I gave a portion of my high voice, at least, to Cedric.
But Sierra hadn't forgotten about Cedric entirely. In a rare Space Quest 4 Easter egg, Cedric appears in the Ms. Astro chicken game and can be blown up by the farmer. Due to a bug, this was almost impossible to see until a recent ScumVM patch. Cedric also shows up in Freddy Farkas, Frontier Pharmacist.
Cedric the Owl looks lost and out of place in the hot desert sun. If you listen close, you can almost hear him say,
"Freddy, if you're going to go in there, I'm going to wait out here."
He always has some flimsy excuse.
If you go into this one scene, he flies in and he perches and he stays there. And then if you go out and you come back in again, there's a couple of vultures picking him to pieces.
As much as you want to join in, leave Cedric's carcass for the buzzards.
Over time, Cedric's reputation as an annoyance became solidified. Here's an Easter egg in the AGDI fan remake of King's Quest II.
In order to earn your knighthood, thou must venture forth on a quest to capture and kill the most insidious and elusive of preys.
What is this prey? A dragon?
No. More wretched than that.
Surely not the scourge of the low mountains? The flesh-burrowing scorpion?
No. But it does get under your skin all the same.
Oh, sorry I'm late, Graham. I hope I haven't missed anything.
Charge!
Graham!
And here's the 2015 King's Quest, a reimagining of the series.
Fine, you're right. I ignored that baby owl's high-pitched hoots for help. Actually, I took delight in the sound of his vest shredding in the badger's claws. In fact, I scared the bushy-tailed picnicker away so I could gnaw on the owl myself. I spewed an evil laugh as I plucked the last feathery tendon from my teeth. I knew this would be the end of that irritable owl.
They actually got Christopher Lloyd to voice that.
Grandpa, watch out! A poisonous snake!
Now, I do have to ask you this. So you said that you think King's Quest V is vastly superior to the other King's Quest games. Why is that?
I think in certain respects it's not quantifiable. I just think there's magic in that game that's just... There's something... I really don't know. There's something about that game that it does everything right. And I can dispassionately look at that game and point out the flaws, because there are some. But I don't care. The music is so much better than any of the others. The way it's segmented, it's literally the journey narrative that they talk about in writing. And I think artistically it looks better than any of the others. King's Quest VI comes close. I sometimes think of Roberta Williams, and I hope if she ever heard this, doesn't take offense, but I sometimes think of Roberta Williams as a fairy just sprinkling fairy dust on some of her games that just make them that bit better. And I just think she poured a bit more onto King's Quest V.
So, now we know the history of Cedric and of King's Quest. Well, almost. As the 90s marched on, Sierra believed that player tastes were changing, and 3D was the way of the future. Not this 3D, this 3D. Prior to this, the company could develop technology to match Roberta's vision. But with Mask of Eternity, the final King's Quest game, they tried to do too much, too fast.
There's a tipping point there where they stopped being that innovator and started playing catch-up. And it's around the 3D era. They started getting into the 3D. Just thinking about it now, actually, I think maybe it's because they went down the FMV with Phantasmagoria and a couple of their other games, gave them like 2.
But for Phantasmagoria, we've installed an entirely brand new facility from the ground up to upgrade the capability of our in-house video production.
Maybe they invested so much in that as 3D was developing at the same time, they sort of missed that and jumped on later. I don't know. But yeah, so there is a time period, though, where they flipped from being the innovator, and they were, to just following.
'Tis beyond my reach.
According to Sierra animator Mark Hudgens, we had a template that every game fit. That made us very ill-positioned to switch to any new kind of game. We made adventure games, and we made them very well. We made 3 or 4 projects at a time, but they were all based around the same technology, and we weren't ready for a change. Sierra developed multiple 3D games at the same time: Mask of Eternity, Gabriel Knight 3, and Quest for Glory 5. All 3 of them used different 3D engines, all mostly designed from scratch. What shocks me is that you've got 3 games, and all 3 of them from the ground up are using different 3D engines.
Yes. Yep.
It's crazy.
I could never get a clear answer on that. And I spoke to quite high up management at the time, and they just legitimately don't have an answer. And part of the reason they didn't have an answer is they were all developed in different cities.
Sean's talking about the fact that in 1993, the company moved its headquarters out of Oakhurst to Seattle. Originally, the plan was for Ken and Roberta to move to Seattle along with the business departments, leaving the Oakhurst location as a game production studio only. But game development soon followed the Williamses to Bellevue anyway, essentially duplicating the Oakhurst studio. Mask of Eternity had a difficult creation process, and many people left the team for less stressful projects. Complicating things further, Ken Williams sold Sierra to CUC International in 1996. A series of managerial shakeups followed, including another CUC acquisition, Davidson & Associates. Despite her name on the box, Roberta would later report she was not in control of the project.
I would say this isn't a role-playing game. This is an adventure game. It's completely different. But the argument the team would get back to me was, yeah, but role-playing games are in now. That's the thing. And it's true. They weren't lying.
Roberta would remove the more overt RPG aspects, only for them to be put back in and her changes taken out.
My team wasn't listening to me. They were kind of telling me that I could go home and they'd call me if they needed me.
At home, Roberta would tell Ken her game was being ruined. Eventually, Roberta regained some control and returned the game to something of her original vision. It came out in late 1998 to mixed reviews. Many mainstream publications praised it, but others were not so impressed. The controls were clunky, the game wasn't pretty to look at, and the added combat mechanics didn't feel like a King's Quest game to longtime fans. To put it even more in context, Mask of Eternity came out the same week as Ocarina of Time and Half-Life, a game published by Sierra. For her part, Roberta Williams still feels stung by the game's legacy.
You know, I do have a reputation, and when we left Sierra, my reputation was pretty good. I think King's Quest VIII sort of brought it down a little bit, and it was very upsetting to me, that whole how that worked. And basically, I don't think that the King's Quest series was irreparably hurt, but it did some damage, and it did damage to me too, and to my reputation.
I'm very sorry
which
to hear that.
really was very, not just bothered me, but it was very hurtful to me.
Amidst all this, the company fell victim to financial scandal. In December of 1997, Sierra's parent company merged with a hotel franchise owner to become Sendent. Sendent then discovered that CUC had been inflating revenue and fabricating income for years. Charges were filed. Sendent stock plummeted. Unfortunately, that same stock had been a significant portion of employee compensation.
Somebody said to me that they lost the value of a house in 4 hours, and that's huge. That's people's retirement. That's people's life. It's hard.
Sierra was sold to Vivendi, who effectively shut down the company in February 1999.
It's a computer ghost town, empty hallways and locked doors where computer operators once manufactured high-tech, sophisticated games. Sierra Online Incorporated closes down its development studio, as it's called, in Oakhurst.
Oh, shock. Really shocked. The main part of the company moved up to Bellevue, Washington. This was a small division, and I think probably it's consolidation.
They would continue on as a publisher until 2008, but they were finished as a creative development powerhouse. Eventually, the magic ends. Sierra closes. One of the things that I think that you state pretty clearly in the book is it wasn't, yes, there's the financial scandal, but it's not just that. So could you try to pull apart maybe some of those threads?
One of them, I think, is the move out of Oakhurst when they moved to Seattle. They lost that little family appeal that small town had. You'd finish working with someone and you'd go home and, someone from work would be just around the corner or living next door. They didn't just work 8 hours or 10 hours in the office. They worked all the time. They worked, they played, they partied. There's some stories I couldn't put in the book because I was asked not to, but I think when they lost that sense of community, that's one of the threads. I think the CUC scandal, that's obviously huge. I think the merger, prior to the scandal, I think the merger was a mistake. The other part of the merger had no idea how to market Sierra's games. They did typing tutors and educational stuff, and that's all great. But then their sales department were trying to sell Leisure Suit Larry and Phantasmagoria as well. That doesn't make sense.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
And they're not bad people or anything, but it is a different culture, and the cultures didn't merge. I mean, from what I understand, basically, from day one of that merger, Ken was lied to. And then you get to an era where the industry became professional. It went from being a bunch of hackers, and that's what they consider themselves, just a bunch of hackers sitting around. You know, Black Cauldron was made between midnight and 8 a.m. in Ken Williams' office in his house. It moved to a professional system. You got games like Myst that are now selling 1 million copies plus, and Sierra made their livelihood on games that, if it sold 100,000, it had King's Quest on it.
Every year we'd do kind of an industry raft trip, and the whole industry would go rafting together. We'd take all of our employees, go down the rivers together, and throw buckets of water at each other. These days, it's more of it's a real industry, and the goal here is to try to grab 2 points of market share.
Oh, what else went wrong for them? I think losing Ken is the driving force. When he stepped to Seattle and into management, Robert Holmes said to me that Ken had a really great ability to find talented people, but then not to control them. If you have to pick one thing, the thread you pull is you take Ken Williams out of it, and it doesn't work as well as it did.
It's impossible to say what would have happened without the scandal, but there's a good chance the magic would have died anyway. LucasArts released its last adventure game in 2000. Amidst falling sales, they canceled sequels to Full Throttle and Sam & Max. The market had shifted. The adventure game genre, though not dead, wasn't what it used to be. There were still games, it just wasn't the blockbuster genre it had been. But adventure game lovers hadn't given up, myself included. So, what would fill the void? That's a question we'll come back to later. For now, I think it's time to show you Owl's Quest. Well, one more thing, actually. Owl's Quest has voice acting for all of its characters, except the narrator. So I asked a very special guest to help me out.
Hi, I'm Josh Mandel, and you're watching a OneShortEye video. Give it a like if you haven't already. After the dealings in King's Quest VIII, the royal family of Daventry is planning a celebration. Little do they know of the horrible monstrosity that will invade their family.
Somebody nailed a fly out on my tree. I love the taste of paper. Wait a minute, that could be useful. Ooh, it says, the birthday of Prince Alexandra and Princess Rosella will be celebrated in the land of the Green Isles.
He'd like to attend, but he can't because he can't fly. Crispin cursed him after Cedric soiled Crispin's flower garden.
I'll have to find a way to lift the curse.
Once we gain control, we find that the interface is modeled after King's Quest VII. I like how the eye has been cleverly redesigned as Cedric's monocle. And no, you're not imagining the spelling and grammar errors. You'll be seeing more of that. Examining the rest of the screen, if we click on the rock,
Cedric looks behind the rock to find a scorpion trainer.
Whatever that means.
I'm sure this will come in handy.
To the north,
Cedric, look out! It's another poisonous snake.
A poisonous snake blocks the path to Crispin's house.
So we need to find a way past it. Inside the tree is Cedric's bedroom.
Talking to yourself is a sign of madness, Cedric.
I wasn't talking to myself. I just accidentally clicked on me.
There's a yellow submarine hanging above Cedric's bed. For some reason.
Cedric looks at the brightly colored submarine.
I think they can tell what I'm doing, narrator.
And underneath the bed, we find a blanket and a sock. Wonderful. Back up top and to the west, there's a beautiful landscape with a giant hole. An inverted tower.
Hello? Is anybody down there?
Yes.
Well then, who is it?
Rapunzel.
Ooh.
Well, aren't you going to get me out?
Why don't you just use your hair?
Can't you see? The tower's been inverted.
Ooh, I see. Well, I'll go see if I can find a way for you to get out.
Venturing more, we come to the desert, which is farther than Cedric ever went in King's Quest V.
The menacing scorpion blocks the path into the cave.
There's a scorpion here, and it will kill you if you get too close. Well, actually, you can get as close as you want to the scorpion. It's just when you click directly on the cave entrance, that's when you die. Thankfully, we have a scorpion trainer. Still have no idea what this is, but hey.
Cedric uses the scorpion trainer to scare away the scorpion.
Move it, Buster.
Wait, before you go into the cave, remember the words open sesame.
Ooh, like sesame seeds? Those are my favorite.
Just use it on the door, will you?
Inside the cave, there's a magic lamp, which we can use to get Rapunzel out of the inverted tower.
Cedric picks up the lamp and carries it with him.
Here, use this to get out.
What? A lamp? How am I supposed to get out of here with a lamp? Oh, I wish I was out of here. Oh, that's how.
No, don't I get a token of appreciation for getting you out?
Not unless you can get me a steed to ride on.
Blast!
Remember that red wagon? That kind of looks like a horse. Just stick with me here. Use the blanket, use the sock, and push the wagon over.
Cedric pushes the horse wagon onto the next screen.
Here, have this snake slayer in return for rescuing me.
A rock? You call this rock a snake slayer?
Hey, be happy you got something.
Rapunzel rewards us with rocks, as if we couldn't have picked up rocks from just about anywhere on any of the screens. But that's what we need to get past the snake.
The snake runs away from the snake slayer.
Do you know? It works.
We can now negotiate with Crispin to remove the curse in time for the birthday celebrations.
Oh, Crispin.
Cedric.
Ah, your flower garden looks lovely. Pity if something were to happen to it.
You wouldn't dare.
Oh, but I would, Crispin. You see, I'm getting a bit tired of this curse.
Okay, I see what you're getting at. I'll lift the curse. Bippity, boppity, boo.
Much obliged. Now I'll be leaving.
And so, Cedric flies on to the land of the Green Isles.
Ooh, I'm finally here.
Excuse me. Do you know the way to the castle?
Ooh, why yes. Just follow that road to the left and you'll come to it.
Why, thank you.
Well, I'm glad I finally got to help someone out on their adventures. Uh-oh!
And that's the game. Except that's not all the game. We didn't talk about the bugs. You thought you were looking at jank, but oh no, there's more. If you get killed by the scorpion, try again doesn't work, and you have to restart the program. Sometimes Cedric can walk right over the inverted tower. Sometimes.
Cedric! Oh no!
Rapunzel's down there, but her ghost is up here.
What did you want me to do again?
I already told you. Get me a steed.
Oh, gotcha.
Never do that again.
See these sliders? They do nothing. Grabbing the scorpion trainer earns you 1 point. Click on the rock again to get more points. You can get infinite points in the same way by clicking under the bed. And in the game's only Easter egg that I could find, you can eat the blanket and get this message. Google Translate tells me this means,
"That was the best vanilla cake Graham has ever eaten."
And this may have just been the best fan game I've ever played. I don't remember exactly the first time I played Owl's Quest, but it left an impression on me, as well as on the other people in the adventure game speedrunning community.
What is Owl's Quest? Okay.
Fan-made games, all in their entirety, are usually awesome in their own right.
Owl's Quest is the biggest abomination to the King's Quest storyline that has ever been created. And that includes Mask of Eternity, so...
I'd call that one a parody more than anything. You know, it is a parody of King's Quest, and it definitely is a roller coaster. So
I have not played it. I am vaguely familiar with it. I laugh at the meme. I think it's great.
It's some kid envisionment of what in the hell sort of freaking thing twisted in his head that decided to just be like, I love Cedric, and he deserves his own game. Let me make some MS Paint drawing of him walking around with this ridiculous freaking half-horsey Ocean Man voice crack sounding freaking voice imitation that is just equal parts idiotic, charming, and ridiculous. Honestly, it's not the worst one of those games I played. Fan ones. They're worse SCI or Sierra ones, I'll tell you what.
So, where did this game come from? To help answer that, I think we first need to learn a little bit about Adventure Game Studio.
It is a freeware engine tool that enables you to make traditional style 2D point-and-click adventure games, kind of right out of the box. And you can get more complicated if you want to, but it provides, you can make a simple game very quickly. My name is Dave Gilbert. I run a company called WAJADAI. We do point-and-click adventure games. I've been selling them since 2006, and I've been making them since 2001. I started making them for fun, freeware, and then started selling them, and I've been doing that ever since.
And my understanding is you've stuck with AGS the entire time. Why have you stuck with AGS for so long?
There's something very powerful about a system that knows exactly what it is you're trying to make. It knows that you typically would need a background, inventory items, characters, dialogue, stuff like that. It also has its own internal logic and programming language, which I'm very familiar with already. 21 years I've been using it. So I know all that.
What do you think about the importance of AGS to the adventure game genre?
This is a broad question because so many adventure games are currently being made in AGS. And I think without it, a lot of these games would not exist. But even going back to like the early 2000s when I first joined and when a lot of these games were first being made, it was during a time when the big commercial AAA companies had given up on adventure games. And so you didn't see them being sold in stores, and the ones that were of, shall we say, questionable quality. It's, I believe John Walker put it, it's like, when you're an addict, any hit is still a hit. And that's kind of how we felt about adventure games. What rose to fill the gap was AGS. Because here was this tool that was easy to pick up, easy to use, free to use. You had a lot of folks making their own games. And yeah, you got some were crap, but some were really, really good. And it managed to fill this vacuum that was left by the larger companies kind of drifting away from adventure games. And it left a great opportunity for indies like me to kind of fill that gap. Because, I wouldn't want to compete with Sierra or LucasArts like in their prime. But now, because the big companies weren't making them anymore, someone like me could step in and be like, hey, here's something I made. What do you think? And I think in terms of the adventure game genre, that was huge. Just having these games available that people could play, even before people started selling them. And also the community was amazing. It fostered this wonderful community of people helping each other and talking about adventure games, and people became friends. I have lifelong friends from that community from way back then. And I think it was definitely a part of gaming history, not just adventure game history, but just gaming history as a whole. And we didn't think of it that way at the time. But there was this sense that we were kind of on the cusp of something. We were doing something. Like, I was able to release a game and people would notice it. And that was huge. That was huge. And AGS is what enabled that to happen. I'm glad that AGS did exist, and I've managed to earn my living off of it for, God, almost 16 years at this point.
And it was out of this scene that Owl's Quest was born. MAGS is a monthly competition for amateur adventure game makers, which is still running today. So there were these, the monthly competitions, the MAGS. How did those, do you recall how those worked?
Yes, because that's kind of how I got my start. It's basically like a month-long jam. But I don't think we had the term jam back then. It was just monthly adventure game studio contest, MAGS. And the winner of the previous MAGS comes up with a theme, and then everyone has a month to make their game. That's how I got my start selling games, weirdly enough. I was in between jobs, and I had money saved up, and I didn't want to get a real job, and I decided to make a MAGS game, and I made a game called The Shiva, and I enjoyed making it so much that I decided I didn't want to do anything else. I decided I'm going to try to sell this, and I added voice acting, got some of the art redone, and I started selling it just to see if it was something I could do. It wasn't this huge seller, but I was a single guy living alone in a crappy apartment, so it was enough, just enough to kind of, keep me going for a little while, and enabled me to make another game, which enabled me to make another one, and here I am. So, I owe a lot to MAGS.
Competitors have 1 month to create a game following a specific theme and rules set by the previous winner. In May of 2007, the rules were set as follows. Number 1. The main story or side plot has to be a modified classic fairy tale. Number 2. One inventory item must be a recognizable item from a different fairy tale than the one featured in the plot. And finally, a yellow submarine must be included in the game somehow. Only 2 entries were submitted that month: Roast Mother Goose by Theatrix and Owl's Quest by Joel Philip Page. And after the voting ended, there was one clear winner: Owl's Quest. So now we know a little bit about the origins of this game, but I wanted to understand it on a deeper level. And if you're familiar with my past videos, you might be able to guess what's coming next.
I don't know if you guys are speedrunning it. God, I hope not.
Owl's Quest is really a speedrunner's dream. There's a lot of exploits, skippable dialogue. The current world record is very optimized, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement still.
In December of 2020, it was time to speedrun Owl's Quest. It started out as most speedruns do, little more than a glorified, optimized walkthrough. But very quickly, David TKI told me about something that broke the game wide open. Instead of the lamp, you can give Rapunzel the sock. This skips the entire cave sequence. And on December 31st, 2020, I would be running the game when this happened.
We'll try it one more time.
We got the 110! That's how we do it! We skipped the 115. Well, I don't know how we could possibly top that, boys and girls. After an unbelievable grind, I had finally gotten the run. Cedric behaved for once, and I got excellent Poisonous Snake RNG. The movement was so optimized, I didn't see how a lower time was possible. I was confident the run would stand the tests of time. Just kidding, I ran it for like 20 minutes, the movement's terrible, there's no RNG in the game at all, and Cedric will never behave, ever. Still, that record would stand until April 2nd, 2021. Runner Santa Claus discovered something else about Rapunzel that broke the game even more. Any inventory item will work on Rapunzel, not just the sock. Before this, you would free Rapunzel and then walk all the way back to the wagon. Now, you can assemble the steed, push it over, and give her the note. saving a trip back. The result of this incredible strat? A 59.75. The 1 minute barrier broken. Santa Claus would remark,
They said OneShortEye's record would stand the test of time. They said it was optimized and would never be beaten. But I believed in myself and in the unthinkable. Mostly the unthinkable.
But I would not be kept down. No, this was my record to take back. And on the same day, an hour later, 53.86. I had also started running the game in Adventure Game Studio version 3.5, which ran smoother and provided a little speed boost for me. But Santa Claus's game seemed to already be running at those speeds, so it didn't actually give me an advantage. The challenge of the run comes from the fact that the cursor disappears during animations. If you run the game windowed, you can line it up with where you need to be, but you're still operating in the dark. Proper cursor placement relies on muscle memory and good estimations. For instance, here I save a little bit of time by mashing left click when the cursor isn't on the screen. The new record was unthinkably fast. But you know what they say about the unthinkable. Sometimes you just have to think a little bit harder. This is a fan game. We're going to play through it casually once, and then we'll speedrun it a few times. Some people have asked me before, is this a real game? And it's a real game as in somebody has made it, but... Okay, here we go. What the heck was that? Okay. That was terrible. Such a stupid run. Don't encourage him. I think Sluice has the right idea. That's better. We'll do a couple more. Okay, here's my idea, because the world record does this first, but I was thinking you have to, if I go to the right first, if I go to the left first, then when I come back, I mean, I have to go on this anyway, but if I go here, right, he has to walk a little bit anyway, so I was thinking that would save a few seconds. If that makes sense. And then he's out. But then I guess it doesn't matter too much because then he's there. I have to move back anyway. Never mind. Chat says we gotta do more. We're on fire right now. 10 more gifted subs if world record. Man.
Can you start moving towards the snake and then use the object? Or is it like 7 in which getting an object will stop you?
That's not actually a bad strat. We should do that. Like start walking and then prep it. Do you even need the Snake Slayer?
You can't use it on that.
They actually programmed something right in this. That was a 52. Somebody clip that. I think that was a 52. That was it. That was a 52. You're a madman, Shrek. It was my proudest accomplishment as a King's Quest speedrunner. It was the most impressive 52 seconds in all of speedrunning. And to this day, it's second on the leaderboards because Hazmat Cat Pat came in and got a 51. They played it faster and better, I guess. So now we know about King's Quest. We know about Adventure Game Studio. And we know the game. But what about the man behind the game? I had to know where this came from. So I went back to the archive.org page where I downloaded the game originally. I didn't think the archive.org page had contact details, but Oh. He made other games? Let's check out Tales of Chickenry. Excellent. Tales of Chickenry, Chapter 1, a stunning start of strategical solutions. Once upon a time in the land of Chickenry, there lived a chicken named Charles who was a knight of the realm. One day, disaster struck Chickenry. The princess had been kidnapped. Sir Charles was called to a council with the king.
You call me, O king? My daughter, Princess Henrietta, has been kidnapped by the wolves of Dogdruff. Please go and rescue her. I will accept this quest and rescue your daughter.
And so Charles sets on an epic journey to save Princess Henrietta. So I thought, well, okay, we're out here. Can we go back in? And by the way, it's controlled with the arrow keys. If you go back to that screen, which is actually kind of hard to do, the game crashes. You cannot see this, but it says error end cutscene, not in a cutscene. We have like a menu up here, sort of. All right, let's try going this way. What? What happened there?
Could I get a ride over to Blackholm's Isle?
That'll cost you 1 gold coin. You should get a meal at the tavern before you go.
The sea looks dark and forbidding. Someone told me that some of these screens are ripped from World of Warcraft. I don't know if anyone can tell me that. It would not surprise me if we could somehow, like, brute force this and go out of bounds to go over this, but I won't try too hard to cheat. What does this say? You take the notice slip off the post. Oh, I wanted to read it. Notice, if the bridge should break down, please see local wizard on Blackholm's Isle. Okay, so this is our house. Yeah, this guy, World of Warcraft clearly ripped this off. Oh, look. Oh, animations. What's this? Sir Charles bends down and picks up the paper. He then throws away his other paper. What? Can we only have one piece of paper at a time? We can only have one piece of paper at a time. Okay, let's try going...
Just an old painting. What? Wow, it's safe. This must contain my family fortune. It looks like I'm supposed to type in 3 numbers, then push star. There! What? Only 2 coins? Oh, well. It should
What?
help a little.
I just put in 666 as a joke and it gave me 2 coins. At this point in the game, I tried to do the puzzle correctly, but that messed things up pretty bad. These blue coffee cups are the default image in Adventure Game Studio, which I think means that the inventory items didn't load correctly. After restarting a few times, I eventually used the cheating method to get 2 coins. One I used to buy a meal at the tavern, and the other I used to book passage to the Wizard's Island. Whee! But as Charles sails on a storm brews. Whoa!
Why did you wake me up? The bridge broke down in Chickenry. That blasted bridge breaks down all the time. Well, I guess I'll have to fix it. Now to fix the bridge. Abra-dumabra. Well, ta-da! Well, ta-da!
All right.
Ah! Well, I guess I'll have to find another way out of Chickenry.
Oh, this face says it all. Look at that. Is there something I have to do?
Ah!
Sir Charles has fallen into a hollow barrel. Where does it lead? Oh. Okay.
Who are you? you?
I am the maker of riddles.
Tell me, is there another way out of this tunnel?
Yes, but to get out of here, you must first answer my first riddle.
My mic is broken, but what if I say my lines into this old answering machine? And so, Sir Charles continues on his way through Dogdrift to rescue the princess.
Zebulon! There has been news that a knight of Chickenry is coming to rescue the princess!
What? Impossible. There must be a way to stop him. Ah, yes, my magic book. Send for it at once.
Okay, so at this point, Charles is trapped in a magic book of fairy tales and nursery rhymes.
So all I need to do is end the story and I can leave?
Personally?
You run around solving puzzles and doing things like this.
Oh, I'm on fire!
That would work. What the hell? Eventually, Charles escapes, and this is where I ran into a major problem. On this screen, I had to get past a guard dog, but I couldn't move, and none of the inventory items worked on anything. Unable to progress further, I had to give up and move on to the next game. The best way I can describe Test Rat Escape is that it's an anti-adventure game. All right, check this out. Here's your menu. Even better, right? Now check this out. All right, you click on this. It's an eyeball, right? Do you think you can look at stuff? No, the eyeball is the walk command. The mouth is the hand icon.
I can't pick that up.
This is your inventory. I didn't get very far in this one either. The last game I played on stream was called Lif and the Treasure of the Tanones. It has a really cool Southwest desert aesthetic, and you get to play as a cute lizard.
It's no use talking to that. No, it's my water bill.
That's cute. Does that say camera on the bottom?
I regret to inform you that you must pay $5,000 for your water bill, which is extremely overdue. You will have until tomorrow to send it in. How am I gonna pay that off? Hey, I'll just get some money out of my safe. If only I hadn't forgotten where it was.
Sadly, I had problems with this game too. I needed to watch this videotape to get a combination to a safe, but the video file refused to play. I'm sorry, folks. There's nothing I can do about this stuff. Oh, man. And after all that, I still needed to understand the man behind the madness. Okay, detective time. Now, look, this site doesn't look like it's been updated since 2007. I wouldn't be surprised if... Thank you for agreeing to this. This is really a treat for me. So what is your background? Where are you from? What do you do? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm from Wichita, Kansas. I'm the youngest of 5. All my siblings play like King's Quest and LucasArts Adventures and those kind of things growing up. A lot of my cousins too. My sister made me a Cedric the Owl sweater for Christmas last year, so I still got that. And I was kind of like the tail end of, I feel like, that big stuff. I remember getting like King's Quest 7 for Christmas one year, and it was like this big deal, and we all played it, sat around for hours playing it. Yeah, my parents are pretty frugal, so we don't get to play, buy a lot. We never had a gaming console or anything, so I was kind of stuck with PC games when like Xbox was like a new thing. They were always instilled in me like, oh, you can make that kind of thing. So my dad tried to get me into QBasic, and that was a bit rough. And then I found like Game Maker and RPG Maker, and like these aren't quite what I wanted because I was really into like King's Quest and that stuff. And I was like, there's got to be something that can make this. So I found Adventure Game Studio, and there was just like a big community there of people that were like really into that kind of thing. And it seemed like no matter how crappy of a game you made, it was just like, oh, it's an adventure game. It doesn't matter, So I was like, it was kind of fun. So I really got into that from like, I think it was around like 6th grade to like right out of high school.
So your parents encouraged it then?
Yeah. Yeah, my dad is into computers some. He had did all the punch hole stuff in high school programming. They let me be on there as much as I wanted as long as I was making games.
So you were pretty young when you started making those.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it was because Tales of Chickenry, that one started out as a platformer and game maker. I don't know, it's just because that's what I could do. I kind of like Sonic, so I was like, I'll try to make something like Sonic, but that's a lot of physics, and it was pretty hard to do. Yeah, and then I grew up on a farm. I raised the chickens, and so that's kind of was like, oh, chickens, I know that. But that was kind of a good one to get my foot in the door, because I just if you could tell, all the backgrounds are most of them are from World of Warcraft. I just go to a random spot and take a screenshot, and then I used to do a lot of claymation videos too, so all the characters were easy to animate, and that is just something I did pretty quick and didn't really worry about it too much. And that one is luckily because I had a lot of play testers, and the one guy that did the voice acting wanted to do all the voices, and he's like, oh, and I want to play test it, and he had a lot of feedback, so that one actually was more solid than a lot of the other ones I did, because I just kind of made them and pushed them out and didn't really care how playable it was. I don't know, I think I was just kind of inspired by what I was seeing at the time, because I know the Liff one, I had an aunt that lived on the res in Arizona. That's where I live now. Not on the res anymore, but I did for a bit on the Navajo reservation. That area kind of inspired me to do that kind of art.
I did ask Joel about the difficulties I was having with his games. He told me that you're supposed to be able to use the fire on the dog, but if that wasn't working, it was probably a bug. He also sent me a walkthrough of Liff and the Treasure of the Tannons so I could get past the safe, which I did, but then there was another bug that prevented me from getting any further. Even with the wide range of AGS games, it seems like most of them, they go for a humanoid protagonist. They're in sort of a normal setting, but your game sort of had this, almost outsider art perspective to it. Was that conscious, or was that just sort of this is what I'm gonna do, and why not?
Probably the latter. Yeah, I don't think I was trying to think of anything. I was really inspired by different just artists I knew. The Raven one I did was just I was trying to Quentin Blake, and he had a children's book about, I was a Mortimer about a raven, and I was like, oh, that's a cool character idea, and so I was just going for something like that. So it's kind of funny, yeah, most of them are an animal protagonist. Thinking back, I'm oh, I need to do that, but maybe I just grew up around animals and taking care of them, and yeah, I just like drawing birds too, so I think it was more just my own, what I did in my free time was drawing.
Why don't you walk me through specifically Owl's Quest? So I know a little bit of the story, and that there was the monthly mags contest. But if you could just sort of tell that from the beginning of, the beginnings of the game, what inspired you to make it, and so on.
It's hard to remember. It was a while ago, and then, yeah, I guess I don't remember what the rules were for the thing. I think it was something about fairy tales, and that kind of fits King's Quest. Because, most of them have some kind of fairy tale they throw in at some point, like Red Riding Hood or whatever. At the time, I was really interested in that, or that fan game was for King's Quest, the Silver Lining one. So I was kind of thinking oh, well, what if they had Cedric in there? That'd be funny.
The Silver Lining is an episodic fan-made King's Quest sequel. Cedric actually does appear in the Silver Lining, sort of, as an Easter egg. But that didn't happen until Chapter 4, which was released 4 years after Owl's Quest.
What is this? I think it's laughing at me.
I knew that Cedric's kind of he's kind of the butt of all the jokes about it, and not so it's just oh, what if he can see things from his perspective?
Gotcha. And I do remember there was one other rule, and it explained something. You had to have a yellow submarine in it.
Oh, yeah, I think I just threw that at his house for some reason. I don't think I was very creative with it.
And it's just on the wall, and
you're oh, that's why there's a yellow submarine in his house. There's no logical reason.
How old were you when you made that?
I think I would have been a freshman in high school, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm 13 or 14.
That makes a little more sense.
Yeah, because all the spelling, I don't know,
I guess that is a question that some people have is are the spelling mistakes intentional, or is it a characterization thing because it's Cedric, he's kind of derpy, or
just being a freshman? Yeah, I was like, I don't know where to put the comma, or it's there or there. Or...
And that's 2. Count 2. Rapunzel's misspelled. Get that 3.
The lady has problems. Can you say tanning?
4.
Can't you see? The tower's been inverted.
5.
Oh, I see. Well, I'll
6.
go see if I can find a way for you to get out.
There were 6 grammatical and spelling flaws in that one conversation.
That lady has problems.
I don't know. So yeah, totally just, I didn't know spelling very well yet or grammar. Yeah, and then I remember I got a lot of people saying, well, he says to go to the left at the end when he's telling the guy where to go, and he's clearly going to the right. And I'm like, well, from your perspective, but he's looking that way. And I don't know. I was just like getting frustrated by that.
Oh, any reason why you chose to use the King's Quest 7 layout? I guess because that was the one that you played.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably like my ideal. That was like my introduction to King's Quest, which looking back, I'm like, oh, is it such a great design? It seems kind of, I don't know. It's taking up half the screen and it's kind of funky. You can see everything all the time, but
this is just a curiosity. Who did the voice acting for the game? Was that just you, or did you recruit people?
No, I think that was all me. On my other games, I had recruited some people to do it, but anyone can do a Cedric voice. You just talk high, and that's about it. Yeah, and then I probably wasn't a great Rapunzel voice. I think my sister was like, she sounds like a man.
Let me ask this. So obviously there are a number of bugs in the game.
Yeah.
How much of that were you aware of and then just said, whatever, because I got to get this out?
Yeah.
Or I think in a funny way, it almost fits, because if you're going to make a game about Cedric as the main character, having the game be a little bit buggy and a little bit
just off,
goofy and weird really fits the character.
Yeah. No, I don't think it was very intentional. And I might have been aware of some of them, and some of them are just like, oh, well, whatever, it'll work. So I think that's just kind of one of my weaknesses. Maybe just putting it out there that I kind of want to do everything myself, but playtesting is not something you can really accurately do because you know how it's supposed to work.
Okay, this is another question. What is a scorpion trainer? What is that supposed to be?
Yeah, I don't even know. I think it was kind of a take on just like adventure games where it's just like, oh, you need a thing, you get a scorpion trainer to train the scorpion, And it's just, I think I drew like a weird, like ambiguous kind of shape. You don't really know like what it actually is. And like you think about like King's Quest 5, it's like, why do you use the tambourine on the snake and then it goes away? I don't know. I guess it's like rattling. I don't know. It's just kind of, I think it's kind of making fun of that.
Be gone, you slithery varmint. Scat!
I love things that are just kind of off and bad in some ways, but enjoyable. I think that's why Cedric's so like lovable, is because he's so bad in a way, but also like you just like love to hate Cedric. So he's like a good character, but probably not intentionally.
Do you think that Cedric deserves the kind of internet hate that he's gotten over the years?
Well, I mean, like I said, I love Cedric, but I like to imagine him as like intentionally kind of a troll where he's, he always tells Graham like, don't fall in there after he fell in,
Ooh, watch out for the bear, Graham.
Tisk. I don't know. I like I said, I love to hate Cedric. I don't think King's Quest 5 would be very fun if they didn't have a Cedric.
What do you think of when you look back on those years when you were making all those games? Do you look back at that with fondness or look back at it at all? How do you feel about that?
No, I really liked making games. I don't know. I know some people are like, oh, I'm going to go indie and do my own thing. And I'm just like, I wasn't there. And I don't know if I would ever be. But I did a little bit after high school. I got help. I did some like HTML5 math games for a guy I knew. And then I messed around with Unity for a bit. I've kind of picked that up recently, though, just trying to just playing around making a game and doing art for one. And it's a lot of fun. So I kind of miss that, I think. That's encouraging, though, that, I don't know, someone's out there playing it, whether it's funny, to just laugh at like, oh, what's this crazy game?
In thinking about, the last couple of days and just generally, I think that there's value in just making small things that, kind of like you said, a lot of people, like, oh, I want to be a full-time indie dev and I want to make this. But I think there's value in having those little things that are just sort of like, I made this. It doesn't need to be anything other than what it is. And hopefully some people get some sort of joy or laughs out of it. And That's really valuable too. What do games today owe to Sierra? What is Sierra's legacy? How has that felt?
Honestly, everything. The fact that they were there and the fact that they showed that it could be an industry, I think is important. It's not just a bunch of guys working in their garage making games, because that's what games were before that. When Sierra started, it was very soon after that the big video game, the Atari video game crash happened. And people like Toys R Us and all these big retailers were like, okay, it's a fad, it's past, let's move on, like they had with so many other things. But people like Sierra, I think they proved that they could get through that and that people were still interested. And this wasn't something that was going to go away. So I think that's probably their biggest legacy, is the fact that they got through that unsettling period, created games that were selling a lot of copies, pushed PCs into the home, always pushing the art. They're always pushing the resolution, was always getting higher, number of colors, sound, just all of it. I think other people would have gotten there, but the fact is that Sierra got there, and they got there first or very close to the front, and they pushed that forward. I think without Sierra, we'd still have an industry. I think it would be not at the level that it is now. I think they're there because of Sierra.
When I'm feeling particularly disconnected, there's a thought experiment I do sometimes to stave that off. I pick an object nearby, like this book, for instance, and I think about all that had to happen to bring that thing into creation. I think about the 50-odd people that Sean told me he interviewed for this book. That's 50 lives that went into this. And then each of those people had family, friends, mentors, and education that made them into who they were to help create this story. Of course, you have Sean himself and his support network, his education, his years of hard work to bring this to fruition. And if you want to go further than that, I suppose you could talk about the printing process itself. How many engineers were involved in the process that makes it possible for this physical object to now exist. Heck, right down to the person who threw it into a truck and drove that over to my mailbox. And I guess it's a reminder that you can find wonder and awe in the mundane. And a reminder, too, to be kind to yourself. You deserve it because you're a part of all this, too.